I don't know if my AI aha this week will break any new ground for anyone, but it's been really something I've come back to a number of times. I've been trying to think about being better at communicating with stakeholder audiences, legal audiences for the most part, but also people involved in the alternative dispute resolution processes that the AAA administers about what the technology means and kind of what's coming. And I think it's really hard for lots of reasons that you and I talk about. People are kind of in different places about what they understand, how much they're using it. Um, but it's also the case that, as you'll see from our next segment, the technology is moving so quickly. It's really hard for anybody with a busy job to keep up. And it's also the case that if you're not, I think, working with it full time and following it full time, it's hard to trust it. It feels pretty weird when you just like see how it works, and it's hard to trust it. And I do think there are some examples throughout history about when we've gone through some significant changes, and what it took to get people to trust what was the new normal. And I was reading an essay this week. I sent it to you like I always do, and I'm sorry for all of my texting of things. But this article about the first engineer who developed the first horseless carriage, and he developed it in the shape of a horse. So it was a carriage without a horse, shaped like a horse. And of course, I went right to all of my generative AI friends and asked for drawings of it. And I have some great ones that I've shared with you, and I think they're amazing. Um, I was said, "Draw for me or show me a picture of a horseless carriage, that's shaped like a horse," and it's pretty cool to see it. And the point was, so people could get comfortable with this new way of transportation, where a horse wasn't gonna be pulling their carriage anymore, an actual horse. This was, like, shortly after Einstein famously said, "The horse is doomed as a means of transportation," which is so funny. But the horseless carriage gave people an opportunity to kind of get used to, like, try on for size, like what this was going to feel like, and you could actually like steer the carriage with reins, like that were attached to the fake horse's head, and so I've been trying to think about like what is the horseless horse shaped carriage for what we're doing right now, because that's the metaphor that I feel like I have to be thinking about as I'm communicating to people. Like we're headed somewhere that's going to be really different. You and I have said many times, I think it's a big brighter future for so many reasons. I think I'm excited about it, but I understand why it's all so scary. And so, what are the ways that I can make audiences, stakeholders, partners, people whose opinions I really care about and I want along for the ride and like the design of what comes next, how can I like transport them in a horseless carriage shaped like a horse? So that's the question that I posed to my chatbot friends, like to help me with a communication project, and thinking across like stakeholders in legal, and what are like the priorities of the different stakeholders, where might they be most you know, fearful or worried, or, what are the things they're most concerned about, and how can I think about tailoring, my message and what I'm talking about to all those different audiences. And it's been great. I mean, obviously you're like a wonderful thought partner to me for like how to talk to different audiences. You're my favorite thought partner. But you're not always available to me. You have this family that you seem to like, you're sticking with
I
them.
had told them that they are problematic in this regard. They seem unconcerned.
And so having this, like, back and forth, and I'm creating, in GPT, I'm creating Canvas documents, and so, and saving and, like, iterating with, like, the different messaging and seeing how it feels for me, what's the best way for me to do this, it's just been, like, a great thought partner, again, on something that really is fundamental to what I do every day, and so it's great to have, like, a 24/7 thought partner. Like, I have random thoughts sometimes, and I can go right back into my conversation, and it incorporates it. And so the full-time thought partner is my AI aha moment this week.
What what is the horseless carriage? Like, I mean, in imagining now that you're describing that, I'm picturing like mannequins of your thought partners who are generative AI, but what are
Yeah.
the horseless carriages for lawyers and judges, do you think?
So I think that it's really important to remind lawyers and judges how much of what they do as humans is critical um to the to their work. I mean, yes, there are things that the technology can already do now much faster and with, less with fewer mistakes. I mean, that we know what those things are. But there are other things it absolutely cannot do and are more important than anything else. There's this like robust literature about procedural fairness in courts, and it goes like I'm gonna butcher it by making it like really succinct, but um, people are willing to take bad outcomes in court if they feel like they were treated with respect, treated with dignity. If somebody looked them in the eye and explained why they lost, and explained what was going to happen next and why. And they're really willing to accept bad news when that happens. And like the human part of that is the most important part of that. Like whatever the legal question was that led to the loss, that's probably something that's, humans also are important in, but, other tools will be able to help humans with that part of it. And then there's the other boring parts about like writing it up and filing it and blah, 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 all the boring parts. And to be able to really lean into the human parts is going to be so good for their clients, for their users, for our communities. And so I think like, emphasizing how important the human parts are is the horseless carriage shaped like a horse, I think.
No, I think that's right. I mean, it seems to me to be both persuasive to lawyers and judges who are uncomfortable with the technology, but also like the thing that gets people excited who've been persuaded
Yeah.
that they've used it and they still feel like they've add value as a human uh,
Yes.
because of the things that it can't do as well as we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and your stories remind me of, there's a video I used to show in my design thinking class, from ILES, Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System, and I know you're on the board at ILES, and it was a design thinking activity for self-represented litigants who just completed, their own divorce hearing, and so they've gone through this very difficult emotional and legal process by themselves, and I was always struck by the fact that a couple of the interviewees would say, I'm just so grateful that you asked me about my experience, and it made me also very sad that just asking them felt like such a big change to what they were used to, but to your point, I think, or relatedly, they didn't have a great experience in most cases because it's very difficult to do that, but just reaching out and asking them how it was made them feel better about the process itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we could do a million times better, but
Yeah, and I mean, that's the example I always go to. The example of, people who can't afford lawyers, like, and how important it is to translate, complicated, stressful processes to them. That's usually where my brain starts, but it's also true at the, completely opposite end of the market where, your strategic partnership with a client that has hard decisions to make is gonna be like your, highest human value. And I'm not saying that you can't have a thought partner in your AI, you probably can, but evaluating like the real life implications of a bunch of different, possible strategies is going to be something that humans are going to be doing with other humans, right? And they're going to be able to talk to each other about what's scary about, this path versus that path. And so I think that's the horseless carriage shaped like a horse. This is good for humans. It's really good for humans.
and also
So
as you're talking, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but you texted me this morning, I think, about another cool study in the medical context. Did you wanna share about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like the latest one, right? I feel like I think that was it radiology or was it mammography radiology that the generative AI was far superior to the humans alone and the humans using generative AI, right? Which is similar to what we saw in the JAMA study. And therefore, like, I guess not surprising. And there was a little bit of back and forth about that result between a number, I don't know them, but like a number of doctors saying that at this point it's kind of malpractice not to use it when
Yeah.
you have findings like that. I mean, I just as a consumer of healthcare, I'm kind of excited about it because I get why humans can make mistakes, and I understand that that happens because I am a human. But having that assist for the kinds of things that the technology will do better will make it much easier for your doctor then to have the human conversation with you about what your options are. Like once we know what we're dealing with, right? It's I think the same thing in a way or similar, analogous. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you talked about strategic partnership is, the detection piece, it's awesome. I mean, the statistics that are coming out, the one that you sent me is a 30% higher rate of detecting breast cancer and mammograms. That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
30%. But then to your point, that doesn't mean that the whole thing is over. I mean, then you need a human doctor to help you navigate what is a really difficult situation and help you strategize and plan in the
Yeah.
same way lawyers do.
And I don't know. I mean, I am a WebMD. I'm a very talented WebMD, but I don't end up counseling very many patients. But I could imagine like the confidence I'd have if I like already knew that I had the right answer on the diagnosis. And so I could move right to like what they're dealing with emotionally, what the choices are. I think it would give me a lot of confidence in my future patient interactions. So I'll let you know how it goes. All right. How about you? You must have had some AI aha moments this week. Which one are we gonna hear about?
So I always have the most elementary examples. Yours are always cool and creative, and this week is no exception to that. But it also incorporates one of our vocabulary lessons a little bit. So there's a concept of RLHF, which is reinforcement learning from human feedback, where humans provide the correction and refinement and alignment to outputs from AI to make it stronger and fine tune it. So I was thinking, sort of like already reverse the paradigm. I'm working on a book project right now. And for part of the book, I'm really trying to self educate around change leadership frameworks and the literature in change management. And so I have all these books that I'm reading. And at the end of every chapter now, I'm going into ChatGPT and asking it to create a quiz for me to reinforce my own learning. And the reason I think it's interesting is I did this maybe a year and a half ago with another book that I was reading, and it might have been Innovator's Dilemma, actually. And it was not actually that great. Like some of the quiz questions were confusing or wrong, but not this time. I mean, I can say, give me 10 questions from chapter 2 of change management, and it knows, like, what chapter 2 is, what the questions are. It gives me true and false and multiple choice, and if I ask it to switch it up, it will. And I do feel like just that 10-minute intervention helps me understand in a way that I wouldn't on my own. And I get excited about the educational applications of Gen AI. And, like, I just think about people who are not in formal educational programs being able to help themselves learn better, which I thought was very cool. So it was like reinforcement learning from AI feedback, RLAIF.
Is it? I mean, I think you told me once that your kids are not using it at school. Is it something that you could imagine like building? I don't know if one of your I don't have kids at home anymore, but if one of your kids got interested in something and it's not something that the school has a curriculum around, can you imagine building a tool like that for your daughter or your son about a topic they were interested in? Yeah.
Totally. I mean, because I'm at that stage, they're 8 and 9, so 2nd and 4th grade, and I'm at the stage where I can't do their math anymore, but I mean, the kindergarten was my max. The instructions that come home are sort of like, at night, spend time with your student working through their math problems, but they learn math in a totally different way that I don't understand really. Uh, but I can imagine working with them with a chat bot in reinforcing their learning. The challenge I think we've talked about before, and I don't think we talked about this on the podcast, is like figuring out how to not have them use it as a crutch.
Yeah.
And just so my son and I were talking about this when they were doing their Revolutionary War unit, and he was the loyalist, which I would have problems with. But in the car, I asked ChatGPT voice mode to describe the arguments the loyalists would have around the Intolerance Act, and he like or it, like, basically summarized it in a way that a 9-year-old would understand, and my son's response was like, "Could you play that again so I could write that down for class?" And then I realized, like, okay, it has to be in conjunction with the parent, but definitely I could see that, and I could see it in professional education, like, all levels of education. I think Sal Khan is doing work
Yeah.
around it too.
I think he's doing really interesting work, with it, which is really exciting for, I think, the reasons you say, like, for places where, people don't have access to formal education, it could be a game changer, which will be
Totally.
good for, the future, good for innovation, good for
Yeah.
all of us. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.